Words matter.
Welcome to the Words Matter Pod, a podcast dedicated to wordsmiths. My name is Akil. I'm here with Devin McCourty of the New England Patriots and Jason McCourty of the Miami Dolphins. You may know these gentlemen for their football prowess, but they're also podcasters now. So, they're in my space. Well, I'm in their space because they've been podcasting a little longer than me. How are you guys?
Doing good, man. Can't complain. How you doing?
Yeah,
I'm
happy to
great,
be here.
man. How are you guys?
No complaints, man. Life's good and enjoying the off season right now.
Yeah, long season. Long careers actually, and you get a lot of time to hang out with your families but thank you for doing this and I'm saying you guys, this is great that y'all even do this, and yeah, I'm just grateful for y'all to even be a part of this.
No, we appreciate it. Love seeing local people do great things, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, man. I've been interviewing a lot of people from Spring Valley on this podcast. You guys spent a little time in Spring Valley in your youth, and been in Nyack and Jersey, and been in the NFL. But you know, you guys are definitely a success story that if anybody gets to learn about you guys, it'd just be a great thing to know about. So who are you guys?
Man, that's a full question there, but obviously you said our football stuff, identical twins, born in Nyack, New York, grew up single mom, father passed away when we were three, had a do everything, do it all mom who had three boys, and she did whatever she had to do to bring us up the right way. Disciplinarian, tough, had to have good grades to play sports, man, attribute God and then her when it comes to our success and who we are as people off the field. And we're able to make it in sports, get a scholarship to Rutgers, play football, drafted, and sky's been the limit since then. We look back, I just finished my 13th year. Dev just finished his 12th. Husbands now, both fathers of three. So it's been quite the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and
Only thing
Devin.
I would.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry. No, I would say the only thing I would add is, as much success as we've had on the field, I think both of us value what we can do off the field, and I think most importantly, like he just ended with, as fathers and husbands, and then secondly, just how we can affect the community and have an impact that don't not only affects our lives, but I think something we both believe in is God's been good to us and blessed us, and now it's all about how to make sure blessings pass through you and not just to you.
Yeah, I love how you worded that, for sure. So obviously you guys are football players and have played, I assume, most of your lives. Is there anything that you've done outside of the game that led you into this other career of podcasting? Because you have the podcast, for everybody who doesn't know, you have a podcast called Double Coverage.
Yeah, I was just saying we've been enjoying it ever since. Just getting the opportunity to start off doing it together as teammates, and doing. I think anything we do together is something we enjoy doing, and being a podcaster has been challenging. Takes us kind of out of our comfort zones, but I think we've enjoyed every minute of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about you, Jason?
Yeah, I think it was something that a lot of people were suggesting to us. We've both gone up and hosted ESPN First Take before. We've done radio hits. We've done different things where we've had to speak a lot. And I think we both find enjoyment in doing that. I always call Deb the media darling. While he's in New England, he's always the guys doing the press conferences and all of that. And I think we found through it, why not use your platform to articulate whatever messaging that you want to come across. I think for us, like Deb said, having a chance to play alongside one another, it made total sense for us to go in that arena and just feel it out. Who knows what'll happen post football, and it was a way of us to build a portfolio
Yeah.
of us doing some things that are different from just football. And I think, like he said, the most important part was getting enjoyment out of it. Trying something new, challenging yourself in a different space, and seeing how you can grow.
Is it also important to control your own narratives as well?
No doubt about it. I think as athletes, that wasn't something guys were always able to do. listening to a little bit of the podcast, The Pivot with Ryan Clark and Channing Crowder and Fred Taylor, and they had Michael Beasley on. I haven't finished it, but he was talking about that when he first came in the NBA, there were no podcasts, there weren't ways for athletes to really get out and control the narrative. Because if you go and do an interview for whatever station, whatever network, they're going to edit it and put out what they feel is going to sell, and however that comes out may be different than what your story started out as. So I think with podcasts, with social media, there's so many ways now for athletes to control their own narrative. I mean, a guy can jump on his Instagram, go live, and fully tell his side of any story of what's going on. So it's definitely different. I remember when I first got in the league, I think Twitter just started, or Instagram. One of them they literally just started. Our freshman year in college, Facebook just started, and you needed a college email address to even sign on. So you think about now, times have changed with podcasts and different avenues where athletes and other people and as such can go and paint their own narrative, and you don't have to worry about what other people are saying about you.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely beneficial. But do you feel that, we are in this do-it-yourself era and players are controlling their own narratives? Do you feel like every player is someone who is credible enough to control their own narrative? Because some guys do just have the natural ability to make that transition into media. Like you see Charles Barkley and you see Shaq and a lot of other Reggie Miller, Chris Webber, a lot of these former players are able to make that transition into broadcasting or podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it all the time. I think first and foremost, I think players first realize when they want to get into the space, you kind of see the work that other people do to have success in this space because it's a job. It's something you have to work at. It's a craft that, I think the people within our sports, when we're playing and they're interviewing us or we see them have a weekly show, we kind of, I think, naturally be like, oh man, that's cool. But we don't know the details that go in it. And I remember having a conversation with Ryan Clark, who was at ESPN, and he talked about that, just how much work he had to do, how much studying he does on a week-to-week basis to be able to go on TV and talk about these things. So I think when you talk about doing different things, I think everyone has the power to control their narrative and to go out and do it. Are you good or not? I think that's up for other people to decide. Do they want to see the content you put out there? Do they think the content you put out there is good? And, I think that is up to the consumer, to the people watching. But I do think everyone has that right and a chance to do those things. But, I think it's something you really got to work on if you want to be good at it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think everybody wants to do it. And I think what he said most importantly was the work that goes into it behind the scenes. And like any profession, it's a skill set. And some people are going to have the skill set, some aren't. And for a lot of guys, when you retire, it's something that seems like an easy transition. And why not go for it? But like you said, everybody's not made for it. Everybody doesn't have the talent or the skill set. So I think it's worth a try for a lot of guys, especially because you're able to use your connections. You've been being interviewed by these people forever. You build relationships, you'll have a way in. And then how long you last, how much money you make, that'll all be determined by how successful and how talented you are at it.
Do you consider yourself creatives?
That's a stretch. I mean, I don't know if I would call myself a creative. I would say both of us possess I would call a unique leadership skills, and I think part of being a leader is putting a team around you. So I think for us, putting people around you to have a different way of thinking. I think most importantly, both of us are married, and our wives have different ways of thinking than ours. And every time I come home, my wife, if we're talking about a podcast, whatever the case may be. I remember when we first started our podcast, her idea of what the podcast would look like was totally different of mine, and her input was so valuable because the things that she was saying from podcasts she was listening to and through her own experiences were able to kind of guide and motivate or inspire us to place certain things into what we were doing. So I don't know if I would call myself a creative, but I would say through a unique set of leadership skills and other talents and intangibles, you're able to place creative people around you. I think one of the most important things is listening. You may have an idea how creative that is, somebody else may determine, but someone may add two tidbits in that next thing you know, it's the greatest idea since sliced bread. So I think being able to assemble a team and listen, it goes a very long way.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think those leadership skills and making that transition into podcasting comes from, being in the huddle in a game or in practice, or being a vocal leader on a team?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all the experiences you go through. That's those leadership skills in one area. They're usually able to transfer it over. But if they don't, it's not always easy. And I would say just being a professional athlete doesn't make you a leader. It doesn't mean that you understand the maturity or how to serve other people, which both of us think is very important when you talk about being a leader. You have to serve other people. You have to groom other people. You have to make other
Yeah.
people become better leaders. So I think all the experiences you go through in life, I think some of the experiences that have helped me be a leader the most had nothing to do with football. It was kind of real life situations that forced me to step up and do different things. So I definitely think playing sports and for us, football has impacted our leadership skills, but I wouldn't say just that.
Mhm. Are there any podcasters that influence you guys directly?
I would say right now is when you see athletes doing it, when you see Brandon Marshall, what he did with I Am an Athlete with Chad, and now you see the pivot with Ryan Clark and those guys, Shannon Crowder, Fred Taylor. I think seeing other athletes, all the smoke with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes, seeing guys kind of transition over to that is definitely an inspiration because you sit there and you watch these podcasts and you listen to what they're saying and over our decade plus in the league, you can probably pinpoint that same conversation you had in the locker room with some of your teammates. And it's allowing kind of that backstage access to fans and anybody of the such to get an inside look at what an athlete goes through or just a human being goes through being in the public light, dealing with family, dealing with finances, so many of the intricacies that has to do with playing professional sports that sometimes we overlook because we look at a Cam Newton or a Tom Brady, a Peyton Manning. We look at these guys as if they're not human because of what they're
Yeah.
able to do and the success they've had on the field. And we're able to hear them kind of behind the surface as just human beings, as fathers, as husbands. You're just like, damn, they struggle the same way I do. So I think it's been very fun to be able to listen and learn from guys that are doing it at an extremely high level.
Yeah. Are there anybody people that are, like the Stephen A. Smiths of the world and legendary, iconic people in media who speak about maybe what you guys do in the podcasting space, or just athletes in the podcasting broadcasting space in general, like as if you're unqualified?
You,
I think for me, unqualified versus less experienced are two different things. I think, like you
Yeah.
said, some of the iconic people, and I look at it both ways because sometimes we'll say as athletes, and a guy will get up there on a Monday after a Sunday game and just rip me apart and talk about how bad my coverage was, how I gave up a touchdown. Sometimes as an athlete, we look at them and we're just like, this dude has never sat in a defensive meeting or understand what this coverage is or that coverage is or what we're trying to get done, but he's on TV talking about me, and viewers are now believing him, and he has no idea what he's talking about. And that
Yeah.
goes for guys that have never played the sport, former players. But as athletes, we look and say, hey, how can this guy talk? He's never played the sport. And I
Mhm.
think at the same time, on their end, you have guys that have been journalists, commentators, whatever, for 30 plus years that know a ton about their craft, and we can't discredit them because they've never played the game. And I think that's no different than a current former player going talking about a sport. I might not have gotten a degree in communication or media or broadcasting or whatever, but you can't take away 13 years of experience. If I'm talking sports, is I lived it. I know when I'm watching a game, I can break down the coverage like that because I've sat in that meeting room. I know what that coach is qualified, however you want to slice it. I think if you can get in there, you can get a job and you can get the job done and be effective. And I think you look at a guy like Tony Romo, he retired, he went straight into the booth and people love to listen to him. And there's other guys that have gone straight into the booth or commentating or analysts after, and they've done it for a year and then they're out of it because they are unqualified. So I think it kind of goes both ways when you talk about that.
Yeah. But there are also guys in the media who they're really football junkies. They're really sports junkies. What about those guys, like who have these strong opinions on what you guys do on the field or what you guys do off the field with media?
I think it's all warranted. I think the game of football has grown partly because of and I would say all sports of where it's now gone. You can stream it, you can watch it on TV, and I think with that you invite more people in to help other people understand the game more. So I think with that, I've never had a problem with someone having an opinion like, this guy shouldn't go from the court or the field straight into a suit and broadcasting because they
Yeah.
didn't do the work that I did to go to school for about. I mean, one of the greatest coaches of all time is Bill Belichick. Like he didn't play a snap in the NFL. I mean, he went to Wesleyan College where he sat on the bench as a player. So I think I don't think you have to be great at something to be able to teach it or coach it or critique it. But I think it's the work, it's the understanding. Like, am I studying this? Am I doing that? And I think anybody can do that. And I think you're finally even seeing like women break through this field and have more than just a hosting role. Like let them come on and talk about the sport and discuss it
Yeah.
because they're knowledgeable just as anybody else. So
Mhm.
I think there are no barriers, for broadcasting or TV. I think if you're good, you're good. If you're not, then I think all of that will kind of, you'll see all of that. As they say, cream rises to the top.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, media people have a job to do. So their job is to criticize, to create a story, to say certain things. So my thing is report with what's being said. I only thing I get mad about from a media is if one thing is said and then you maybe go with a headline that definitely doesn't depict what was said in a quote. And whenever that's
Yeah.
happened to me, I've addressed it directly with whatever reporter it is. And that's the beautiful thing about social media. A reporter tweets out a headline about something you said, you can retweet it right then and there and say what you need to say about it. You don't even have to wait for the next day. So I've done that. I've said to a guy, I have no problem with athletes calling reporters out like, yes, you have a job to do, but just do it to the best of your ability and don't just put things out there for clickbait to get people to come read stuff that wasn't what was actually stated.
Yeah. So, on your show, you speak about topical matters in the NFL, uh, and with that comes the possibility of offending one of your colleagues, whether other players, coaches, front office, and the commissioner. How do you prevent yourself from doing that, or do you even care?
I mean, I don't think that falls into for us, but I don't think we think about it. I mean, if the NFL makes a ruling on something and we disagree with it, whether it's on our podcast or in an interview, we're going to speak about it. I mean, you go back to COVID, to social justice things. Like we've been very outspoken on those things. So I know when we do our podcast, that's not something we worry about. I think as athletes, we have that. I wouldn't even say as people, we have a right to have an opinion and speak about stuff. So, and I think like Jay always says, like we're both two accomplished guys who have played in the NFL for a long time. We're a little bit more fearless than guys that are trying to, get that next check and get the big contract.
Yeah.
We've done all those things. And I think that gives us a chance to speak freely about either things we believe in, or I would say sometimes things that are very common to guys in the locker room. And I think that's what's key about being a veteran. You're allowed to use your voice to amplify what the masses sometimes talk about. And we've had veteran players who have done that to help us when we first got in the league, and we just try to do that and pay that forward for the next guys that are coming up in the league.
Do you think that, because I mean, podcasting's been around for a long time, but only more recently you started to see athletes get into podcasting. Do you think if you started your podcast, maybe 2015 or so, when you weren't in the league as long as you are now, that you would still not be, or you'd probably be more fearful of voicing your opinion on like racial related matters and police brutality and things that you disagree with in the NFL?
I would say you might be more selective with how you say it. And I think it just depends upon what it was. Back in 2016, Kaepernick decided to take a knee and guys decided to raise their fists. And I think there were a lot of guys in the league that were very passionate. And I think Kaepernick, I give him so much credit because he brought attention and awareness to an issue that had been going on for a long time, but it slapped a lot of people in the face and woke a lot of us guys up. I think guys are passionate, myself, Dev, especially included, of risking some of it to go ahead and speak up for things that you thought were important. So I think issues that are near and dear to your heart that you're passionate about, even in 2015, we would have discussed things that we felt needed to be said. Does that mean we're going to go on there and talk bad about ownership or a general manager? No, like I think part of what you have to learn is as an NFL player, you created an enormous platform for yourself to be able to use that to spread awareness, whether it's for sickle cell disease that we do, whether it's for social justice to get better things for Black and brown people. But the biggest thing is your platform. So I think at the end of the day, you don't want to rough the wrong people so that, hey, you lose that platform and now you're scrambling to try to continue to have, because Dev's won 3 Super Bowls. Every time he wins a Super Bowl, he gets more followers. I've won a Super Bowl when we played together. So all of those things just creating a bigger and bigger platform for you to be able to do big things. So I think I remember talking to a barber in a barbershop, and we were talking about taking the knee, raising the fist, all these different things surrounding the anthem. Man, he said to me, he was just like, yo, I feel like it's pointless for y'all. If you sit there and you take a knee or you do whatever and you end up out the league, he said, as a Black man who's benefiting from your voice and the things you're saying, if you're not still there in that press conference to say those things, to bring awareness, to help me in my neighborhood, he said, perspective. I think it depends upon the guy. Some guys came in, and I think to that point of just a change of times. You know, as we look at the superstars when we were a kid that were playing sports, there wasn't any social justice talk really. There weren't athletes in activism, and now you look at a LeBron James, who's probably the biggest athlete on the planet, and he's always speaking up for whatever issues that he sees in the community. So I think it's just a change of time where you're having so many more guys who are willing to sacrifice their own individual, whether it's opportunity to make money off the field or whatever it is, to be able to help those around them.
A lot of athletes speak out against racial injustice. How much of it do you think is just contrived and disingenuous, and how much of it do you think is genuine?
You said when athletes speak out?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think a lot of it is genuine. I think,
it's where they come from.
yeah, exactly. I think a lot of these athletes are speaking about experiences. You know, I've learned a lot just from being in the NFL. You know, we're from New York, I think, and we've seen things. And I think sometimes you think like you understand, and then sometimes I'm talking to guys from Mississippi or deep down south, and they talk about things night, and I'm like, what? And like we don't think about that being in the Northeast. You know, the world is different. You know, and you think about deep down. So like, I always think about guys. You know, you're not gonna go speak about something like that unless you're passionate, because for one, it draws a lot of attention, a lot of scrutiny. So to even bring it up, you know, it's one of those things that's hard to jump on the bandwagon. You try to jump on
yeah,
that bandwagon now, you better kind of try to ride with somebody else and just, you know, like a tweet or something. Don't do any retweets.
Yeah.
Just quietly like something, because soon as you put your voice in there, there's going to be people from the opposite side. They're going to come for you. They're going to talk about how bad you are. I mean, I look at Malcolm Jenkins, a good friend of mine. Like we talk about social justice, and you know the FOP, the head of their guy, talked about how bad he was as a player, about missing time, and it was like, what does that have to do with anything?
yeah.
And I think that's just the reality of speaking out in this culture sometimes, what it brings. You got to be well prepared. It has to be something you believe in, because if not, it's going to be a tough road.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely takes a lot of it's brave. It's definitely brave. Even if you're not even genuine, even if it's just something that you want to be a part of because your colleagues are a part of it, it's brave either way. So, on your podcast, you spoke a little bit about the Washington football team, formerly the Redskins, changing their name to the Commanders. There's been a long history of racist caricatures, specifically Native Americans being the mascot of sports teams on every level of competition. Chicago Blackhawks, Florida Seminoles, the Chief Wahoo of the Cleveland Indians logo, which is very racist. Do you think it's still appropriate for indigenous Americans to be used as mascots?
No, I truly believe that's why you're seeing teams change their names. I mean, at the end of the day, there's enough names that we don't have to use these names. So I think if it offends somebody, why not change it? Like the Commanders, like yeah, we might hear Commanders at first. I don't know, it's just because we're so used to calling them the Redskins, and that's offensive. So
Yeah.
why not just change the name? I think sometimes we put way too much thought into certain things and we're going back and forth. People are arguing the debate and just come up with another name. So many teams have had to do it. It's not that big of a deal. So I think anything that deemed as racist like that, like let's just change it and let's move forward because we know our past. Like you cannot argue facts of the past. We know the way certain groups of people were treated, and we can't say we're moving in a better direction to treat people differently and treat people better, but we're not willing to lose our old ways. So that's a no brainer.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I agree.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's like imagine if the Knicks were called the Negroes or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think if it offends a group of people, even if you think it's not a big deal, it's like Jay said, like there's other things to choose from. Like Commanders is weird to us. In 20 years, people hearing that the Washington Commanders used to be the Redskins are gonna be like, what? Like, why would they ever, you know what I mean? So it's something I think will be great for the future.
Yeah. Do you think that the athletes are have become disillusioned by the media? That's why they're getting into the do it yourself lane of podcasting?
Uh, I would say no. I think the main thing for athletes is we always hear when guys get in, it's not for long. The NFL, we always talk about NFL is not for long. Your career is
Yeah.
not going to be that long. Figure out what's next. Strike while you're hot. Strike while you're playing. However you want to say it. I think for a lot of guys, depending upon how you grew up, where you came from, but like some guys, you don't know how to do that. You don't know what it means to strike while you're hot. You may not know how to build relationships with certain people that don't look like you or come from a place like you because you feel like you can't relate. So I think when podcasts came around, guys saw it as an opportunity. Like people are telling me to strike while I'm hot. Well, a podcast is a way I can strike because if I get on this podcast and I hit, then that's opened up a whole new avenue for me for something that I can do outside of whatever my sport may be. So I think athletes look at it strictly as an opportunity. You look at LeBron started his TV show, The Shop. Kevin Durant has produced different things. These guys are looking at it like these are opportunities to make money. Like this is different things that I can get into that has nothing to do with basketball that I can build my own brand and kind of build my own legacy. So I think for guys, sometimes it's like, man, this ain't got nothing to do with the media. I could care less. I'm just trying to build my brand and build on an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Do you look at it like that as a way to build your brand and like broaden opportunities?
Yeah. I think for us, I think I love the idea of being able to tell your own story as well. But I think for all of the interviews and stuff that we've done, it was like, man, like why wouldn't I try to do this? Like I'm already doing it for free now. Like why not when I'm done playing, try to get paid to go and talk football or talk life. So I definitely see that aspect of it. But I do think that athletes I think they got tired of someone having to speak for them. I think as much as our fans want to be engaged, I think when social media came out, I think a lot of athletes realized like, I don't need a third person to tell my story or tell my opinion. I can do it through social media. And then more and more outlets came out to be able to do that. And like Jay said earlier, I think fans love the idea of getting a behind the scenes look at whatever it is we do. I think athletes realize like we don't need a major TV channel or a huge interviewer to come and ask us like we can give you that raw material ourselves and build a whole nother outlet to kind of source money, a livelihood, something to do, a hobby, whatever it is. It's the same thing where you see so many guys gaming and doing that on Twitch and streaming services like that, they're connecting with fans in a different way.
Mhm.
So I think it's awesome how people have just learned how to connect and do different things. And I think it's great that the industry of journalism still hasn't died. Like people are still interviewing us, still have beat reporters that do their job. And I think all of that is necessary in sports.
Yeah, for sure. It's almost turned. It's almost like it's an ecosystem now where you can rely on so many different things, but at the same time, you kind of almost need the traditional journalists and the athlete turned journalist to survive in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a place for everybody. And like you said, ecosystem is a great way to describe it. There's going to be athletes that are, I mean, even as you watch it, I mean, you watched Monday Night Countdown, you'll have a Booger McFarland, you'll have a Randy Moss, but then Susie's on there too to keep things going. So I think you have the combination of it all working together. You can't make up 20 years in journalism or in broadcasting. You can't make up 13-year Hall of Fame career in whatever sport it is. So I think the combination of the two or three, however many personalities are on there, I think really enables some really good TV and some really good content.
Yeah. Do you ever want to get into TV?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we've done throughout our careers. I know here in New England, we were playing together. We were on a show locally called Quick Slants. Like Jay said before, we've hosted ESPN First Take before. So it's something that I think that we both enjoy. And I think we'll probably both look into it. We're actually going to the NFL's broadcasting boot camp this offseason just to get some experience and see how much we like it.
Yeah.
And I think we're all about trying something a little different, something new, and seeing how it all works out for us.
Yeah. Did you ever think that football was the end all be all? Like when you were growing up, did you ever think that there would be anything else you would be doing, like life after football? Because a lot of
Man,
athletes don't think like that.
yeah, the crazy thing for us is we weren't those like big name guys with a ton of offers. Like we didn't grow up and everybody was just, oh yeah, can't wait to go see them guys play on Sunday. I mean, for us, we we grew up, we ended up going to a good high school. We both ended up playing well. My senior year, I got an offer from Rutgers and Boston College and Kent State. So I had three Division 1A offers to choose from. Dev only had he had Division 1 AA schools, and the only Division 1A school he had was Rutgers. So like we weren't the guys that people were beating down our doors to come play for him, and we both ended up selecting Rutgers. And throughout my career, it wasn't until I was going into my senior year where I had a few agents call me. Where it was just like, damn, like this is a reality. And then
Yeah.
there were guys ahead of us, juniors and seniors that were ahead of us that ended up making it in the league and having careers. I'm just like, man, like I don't know if he better than me. Like if he did it, I think I can do it too. And I think that's when it became a little bit more of a reality. And then like I started off when I talked about kind of our backbone growing up, it was our mom. And for us growing up, we didn't play a sport or go to a practice if we didn't get A's or B's. So I think for us, we didn't know what we would have done. Like we didn't know what profession we wanted to go into. Dev has a degree in sociology. I have a degree in information technology. So we both have our bachelors, and we knew that, heck, if football doesn't work out, like I'm getting a scholarship to go to a school to get myself a degree and figure that out while I'm at
Yeah.
school. So I don't think it was ever the end all be all, but it was always number one. I can remember vividly writing a report or some sort for school and saying in it that one day I'm going to the NFL or the NBA and I'm going to buy my mom a house. That was always the dream, and always chased it. But like everybody always says, I wouldn't call it a backup plan because I didn't plan to fail, but you got to have something else going. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. And Devin, how do you was it the same for you? Did you think the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I would say when you're young, you dream about playing in the NFL or NBA. Like Jay said, we made it to the NFL. You don't right away think like, all right, I'm gonna have to do this after. It's like I made it. Like this is what I'm gonna do. And I will say, the locker room, people around you do a great job of pouring into you that hey, like if you're lucky, 35, like that's around a 10-year career. Like that is beyond blessed in this league. Like, but you're still only going to be 35. Like, what's next? And
Yeah.
I think those things has always made our minds kind of, think about what are you going to do after? And it's been up and down. I remember first getting into football, I was like, I'm gonna always be in a football. I'm gonna coach. And then as the years went on, I was like, I'll never coach. Like I'm good on that. I'll wait to coach my kids' sports teams at some point. So I think for all players, when you dream to do something, you dream to do that, but we dreamt to do a unique livelihood that ends at a date that is a lot earlier than a lot of other people's professions. Doctors don't have to dream about being a doctor and something else, because you can be a doctor for 30, 40 years if you want. You're not going to do that unless you're Tom Brady. You're not going to be in the NFL for over 20 years. Like that's unheard of. So you have to think about it sooner than later if you want to actually be productive after the game's over with you.
What advice do you have for guys in your position, athletes who only see themselves as football players, who don't necessarily have the confidence or well spoken like you guys and knowledgeable as you guys to be a part of this media space?
Yeah, the one thing I will say is I feel like the new generation of athlete is way better than where we were coming into the league, where it was frowned upon when we came in the league if you had too many things going on outside of football. And I remember talking to Martellus Bennett, and when you talk about being a creative and thinking outside the box, like that is him to a T.
Yeah.
And when he first was in the league, he was the Cowboys, and they were basically telling him like, bro, you doing too much. Like you're not focused on football, and that's the way it's perceived. And I think nowadays you have guys that are into so much more because these guys grew up in the social media era. Like they've been seeing all of this stuff going on for their entire lives. But I think what I would tell guys is if you feel like you don't have anything going on outside of football, use your off season to work on it. If public speaking is something that you feel like you're not good at, Google and find out how do people get better at public speaking. Go to a local school in your playing city, or go talk to the person in the communications department, PR, and do things that is going to open you up and challenge yourself. And I think something that I've heard, like been kind of researching and reading about a lot lately, is just having a growth mindset. And I think for a lot of, I won't say for a lot of us, for some of us as athletes, we're all about growing with our sport year in and year out. Just all right, the things I didn't do well during the season, I'm going to work on that in the off season and get better at it. But our off season, or even just our time away from football, have to develop a growth mindset to grow in things outside of football. You may decide like, hell, I got to the NFL, I'm making millions of dollars. I need to start to learn finance. I need to take an accounting class. You may finish and say, you know what, I want to go into business. I'm going back to get my master's in business. So having that belief that, I can do things outside of my sport and be willing to grow. You may not want to get any other degrees, but it may just be, on my spare time, I want to get into real estate. So I can't just say, all right, I'm going to find a realtor and give them my money. Like now I got to go sit down and research what does real estate look like? And then I want to go find somebody that's been doing real estate for 30 years and I have capital to bring with it. But I need you to teach me the game, but I want to have the right questions to ask you and have some knowledge of it so you don't take stuff from me. So I think that's what I would tell guys, start to develop a growth mindset for yourself. The things that you feel like you need to work on, or if you don't even know what you need to work on, go talk to an older guy on the team, talk to a player development person to start to develop some skills outside of just being a good football player.
At what age, what time in a person's career do they have to wait till they become a professional or college or high school to develop that growth mindset?
I think the sooner the better. And I think we see it all the time being veterans in the league. Each guy comes in at a different level. Like I played with two guys, Joe Tooney and Ted Karras, who came in and right away they got in the business plan and they got their MBA. Like these were guys that, I think Joe was a 4th-round pick, and I think Ted might have been a 6th or 7th or undrafted, I'm not sure. But they went and got their MBA right away. And, Joe ended up signing a 5-year, $80 million contract. Ted ended up signing a 3-year, $18 million contract. Like these guys making good money in the NFL. And at the young age of like either their first or second year, they were like, this is what I want to do. Like, I know football's not going to last. So I think having that, and I think there's guys that, now because of everything that happens and players, men and women understanding how sports don't last, they're doing that in high school and college now. They're trying to go to schools that not only give them a great chance on the field or court, but they're also trying to pick schools that give them what they want outside of the sport from the education standpoint. And I think that's tremendous because we don't know what injury, we don't know what play, we don't know when our last, whatever you want to say, snap play, like we don't know when that's going to come. So the more prepared you are, the better it is for that individual.
Yeah, for sure. On the most recent episode of your podcast, you spoke about former NFL coach Brian Flores suing the NFL and being put in a position where he was being incentivized to throw games in exchange of $100,000 per game. How often do you think that? Oh, how often do you think that players are put in the position of Coach Flores?
That type of stuff, like you don't know, like, and conversation that happened between ownership and head coach, like none of us are privy to that. Like you have no idea what goes on. You only can judge people by your dealings. Like when we talked about Coach Flo, we talked about Flo based on our dealings and who he is as a not only a coach, but as a human being, as a husband, as a father. Like we got a chance, especially Dev, he was around Flo for a long time playing in New England. We got a chance to know him as a person. For us as players, I've never been a part of any type of thing where somebody's paying you to lose. Obviously, we saw back in the day, New Orleans had the bounty gate going where guys were getting played for positive plays like the interception and different things like that. But I don't know. I mean, the one thing we know happens in the NFL is tanking. We know teams purposely set up rosters to lose, to gain salary cap space, to gain draft picks. That's just something that goes on. Whether coaches are paid for it or not, we don't know whether that's true or not. But we know tanking exists, so it may not be far from it. But those type of things, you just got to wait for it to unfold and see where all the facts lie.
Speaking about tanking, I mean, if you compare tanking to um, throwing games for money, what do you think is a greater sign of just having like less integrity? Like what's worse?
It's tough, and I'll take this one from you, Deb, because I was in Cleveland for the 0-16 season, where we obviously were tanking, and I think there's a difference though. I think if a player's throwing a game for money, you're doing it selfishly to just to have financial gain. With tanking, you see results. So we watched Cincinnati tank, draft Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow gets injured. They end up sucking again. They're able to draft better players, Chase, and then the very next year they're in the Super Bowl. So I think the difference is there's a difference to it because tanking has proven to be a method to get better. Throwing a game to get money isn't improving your overall as a player. That's just for financial gain. So I think that's the biggest difference with it. You see in the NBA though, they've switched it up because now there's a lottery. So just because you're the worst team in the NBA, yes, you have a better probability to get the first pick, but it's not guaranteed to you. Whereas in the NFL, it's totally different. If you have the worst record in the league, you have the number one pick. So it's tough in that sense. But if the NBA, if you automatically got the number one pick, think about it. Zion Williamson came out of the NBA, came out of Duke a few years ago. If you're a terrible team, why not? We watched LeBron James just change the Cleveland Cavaliers as an organization. Like it can make so much more money for you and can do so much for your community, for your franchise that it makes sense. It's up to the league in itself to stop it if they don't want it.
Yeah. But then at the same time, you could look at it like this. If a team is tanking, that's also for financial gain as well,
No
for
doubt.
yeah.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. But I believe the financial gain comes with, like, if you're a fan of a team, what is the only thing you want to see that team do?
Win.
win. And we want to, and not only win a championship. Like I remember being a part of Tennessee for 8 years, and I played under Coach Fisher, and people used to call Coach Fisher mediocre fish because every time as a team you're always decent. Like you might just get into the playoffs. You're always right around 500, and I think teams make decisions where like, all right, do we want to be okay, or do we want to go all in to win a championship? That was one of the best things I loved about my 3 years in New England, where it was every single year we were retooling to attack a championship. There was no, all right, we got to get a few pieces this year, and then maybe in a few years we'll make our championship run. It was just like, nah, every single year we're going to do and make the moves necessary to go out and try to win a championship. You watch the NFL, all 32 teams aren't trying to win the championship. Some are just trying to get by, some are trying to hang on to jobs. So I think that's the unique thing is, all right, where do we want to be as an organization? Do we want to be a championship organization, or do we just want to end up in the red at the end of the year and make sure we made money? Because at the end of the day, all 32 franchises, whether you're 1 or 32, all of them are making a big profit. I mean, we've seen franchises grow from the hundreds of millions to being $4 or $5 billion franchises. So to me, I'm not a fan of tanking because I had to go through it. 0-16, being a part of an organization where you show up to work every day and you know the odds are stacked against you and they don't want to win. But from the outside looking in, I get it from the competitor maybe that might be in ownership of like, damn, just being okay. Like I'm okay with being bad for a year or two if that's going to ultimately give me a chance to play for a Super Bowl, because there's nothing like it. We're all doing it for that one goal.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to even speak further on tanking, uh, how does it feel to be on a losing team and knowing that that organization wants to tank in order to get a top pick, and you're coming into the league very naive and like excited to win and just to be in the NFL and all the things that come with it? What does that feel like when you see all of these disillusioned veterans and, disgruntled players and disgruntled organization who they're just trying to move forward, and you're like really focusing on the 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 near future goal of, making it to the playoffs or winning a championship that season?
Yeah, I can't answer that. I haven't been on them teams like Jay.
He's not lying. The 2020 season, we were together in New England, and we were 7-9 that year, and it was almost nice to see because it was brutal for the people there. Like I remember Belichick talked to us at the end of the year, and he said, "We'll never be like this again." And that was 7-9. I've finished years at 2-14, 3-13, 0-16. It's brutal. I remember when I finished the year in Cleveland, I told my agent, that was after my 9th year, I had signed a 2-year deal, so I had another year left on my deal. I told my agent, man, if you can't get me out of Cleveland, I might retire. Like, there's no way I'm playing for this organization again. And I had a solid year, so I knew that if I was released, I'd have an opportunity to go play elsewhere. So for me, especially, I think there's phases for you in your career. You first come into the league, you want to win, but you want to get paid. Like you can win 10 Super Bowl championships, but if you don't get no money, when your career is over, that Super Bowl ring ain't gonna buy you a house. So at the same time, at that young player, when I was in Tennessee and we're 2-14, we're 3-13, it was just like once I got paid and as I got older as a veteran, it was just like, yo, this ain't it. And you start speaking up, talking to the powers that be, like, hey, what's going on here? Why we're not doing this? You start to question some of these things. But the young you, like you said, naive, you come in and we may not be winning or are we tanking? But at the end of the day, you're just like, yo, I gotta go out there and ball. I gotta make sure. This is what I tell young guys. If we're losing every game, the one thing you know for sure that's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of change that next season. So you better make sure you're putting your best foot forward on the field, that one, they see you out there playing and they decide to keep you here, or two, they decide, hey, this team is terrible, we're going to blow it all apart. Somebody else is watching your film like, yo, we need to go get that guy. It's not him, it's the pieces around him that's not going to work. So I think there's phases. The older you get and the more experienced you are, the more you want to win, because you know you're getting closer to an expiration date out there. So you want to get your chance to go play for that Super Bowl win. I think for somebody like Dev, when you get that taste of winning early on, I mean, that's your standard. You know, you come in and his second year, he was playing for a Super Bowl. They ended up losing, but every year out of your career, you see how special it is to get to that game. Every year is about getting back there. For me, I started my career and I was losing. I'd never made the playoffs until my 10th year. So it was just it's a different, it's just different expectation of what goes in, what goes, it changes your mindset a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, how important are narratives in the NFL and in football in general?
All right, so important. I mean, I think so much of what we see um, is because someone tells us this is what it is. And I know for us as players, I think that is a key thing of why you try to do some of the things on your own, because you don't always think that people have your best interest, I would say. So I think narratives are so important. I think we've seen that with any big thing that's happened in the NFL, suspensions, all of those things, it's about public opinion. So I think when narratives are created about individuals or a team or different things like that, it gets run with, and like it's hard for anybody else to have an opinion because we don't know. We only know the narrative that's being preached to us from the NFL, which owns the NFL network and has a
Yeah.
lot of strings to make, you know, the media control what comes out. So I think it's so important to have, that's why I think it's so important to have so many different media outlets so no one person has control of that. I watched the show Succession on HBO,
Yeah, me
where they're
too.
a big media conglomerate and they, you know, trying to own everything and how important it is to not let someone do that. And I think we see that so many different times.
Mhm. Do you ever think that a major sports league like the NFL that has their own network, do you ever think that they would allow whatever narratives that are put out to show the transparency of the league and the flaws of the league?
No,
Mm,
I think everything, not just NFL, any sports league, perception is reality. So I
yeah.
think as a league, you'd be crazy to go on there and shoot yourself in the foot. You know what I mean? When things are played on NFL Network, it's going to be for the betterment of the NFL. We're not going to put somebody on here that's talking down. Now, there may be times where you allow content on there that challenges you to help you become a better league, but in a certain way. And it's no different than the NBA. There's NBA TV. We're not going to play things on NBA TV where we're just bashing ourselves. I think for the NFL, it's always been about perception. You know, we have to make sure that we come across in a positive light because we're ran off, it's a consumer business. We need people buying tickets. We need people buying these jerseys, these t-shirts, all of these different things. We need people signing up for the NFL package. So we don't want to be perceived in a negative light.
Yeah, for sure. How I saw somebody compare professional sports in America to like we live in a capitalist society, but in sports for whatever reason there's a salary cap. You know, so it's almost like it's like a contradiction because it's almost communist in sports, but the rest of America it's capitalism. So, you know, what why do you think that's the case? Like why is there a salary cap?
I think it's very interesting too, because I think overall in America, we don't talk about people playing on level playing fields too, whether it comes to education, job opportunity. We all know that depending on where you start that race determines how far you get. I mean, we've all seen that commercial that has a group of kids lined up and it says, you know, if you grew up with both parents, if your parents worked and had a job making X amount of, like we've seen that, and depending on where you start and where the finish line is. And I think sports try to create this thing called a level playing field, parity. You know, you don't want every year the same teams to be the big money teams, the big
Yeah.
market cities where players want to go. It's a big market. The owner, you know, you might be from New York City on real estate. You do this, you do that. You have the most money in the league. Now you're able to pay the best players. Now there's no parity. It's easy to dominate. So I think, in a sense, the cap was created to try to keep that parity. I think people enjoy seeing different people win. Like I think how many people enjoyed watching the Bucks win a finals and win a championship. And you think about it, they played the Suns in that championship. You know, And just as much as people love that, you still love the big market. People love to see the Knicks be a good team. They love when the Cowboys are in the playoffs and winning. But I think the league understands how much more money they make when the small teams come up and they take over, and then it gets back. So I think that back and forth of anyone can win makes more people fanatics of a team, and then essentially brings more viewership in. When viewership comes in, bigger companies want to pay more money for marketing. People want to pay more money for the TV deals. And I think that's why you've seen, especially football, grow. I mean, since we've been in the league, '09 to 2010, like the amount of money that the league is making each year has just gone up more and more and more each year. And this is with a lockout in between, this is with a pandemic in there, and it still continues to generate a ton of money.
Yeah. With caps and preventing the big market teams from monopolizing all of the victories, do you think that's also a part of narrative creation?
Um, I think anything can be construed that way. I do believe, and what Dev said is that the salary cap was essentially just designed for what it is, of just, hey, we don't want one team to go and just win every single game. And I think obviously that is a narrative, because if we have one team winning it, that's not the narrative we want, because if there's only the Patriots, and they've done a lot of winning, but if they're winning because they're paying the most money, the other 31 teams, you look at it and it's just like, if I'm an owner of a certain franchise, why keep this? Like, I don't have a shot at winning. Am I still gaining money? Because essentially you're not going to continue to gain money, because if you have the lowest amount of funds, you're probably going to have the worst players because you can't keep up. So if you're team 32, how are you going to get fans at your stadium? How are you going to get merchandise sold? So it just wipes out teams, and that's not the narrative you want. So I think, yeah, you can say narrative. I think at the end of the day, narrative, parody, whatever you want to say, I think it was done in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, what does the future hold for Devin and Jason McCourty as broadcasters, as podcasters, or just in everything else after football?
Uh, to be determined. I think for
Yeah,
both of us, we're going to try to play this game as long as we can, barring any injury or things like that. But I think in the near future, figuring out what we can do while we're still playing. Obviously, we love broadcasting and doing different things like that at TV. I think what we love most is we love talking ball. We love being able to teach what we've learned through the years. Jay's played with a couple different defensive coordinators, learned different defenses. I've been in one place, but I've been able to see and hear different free agents come in and say, do things. And so we love being able to pass that knowledge on, but we also have other passions and things we want to do. And I know for us, one of the biggest things is going to be just being a dad, being able to not have to miss, like this past year, missing Halloween for me because we had to travel to the West Coast on Friday. And I look forward to making a schedule around my kid's schedule. And then I look forward to trying other things, private equity, real estate, just trying different things that you've seen people get into. And I think, like Jay said, having that growth mentality, learning more and more about different things, I think makes you a better individual. I think that's our purpose here. How much can we learn and continue to learn?
oh,
Yeah, yeah, I would agree. I think sky's the limit. I think for me, the more I'm reading, the more I'm listening to other people. Sometimes we cap ourselves, and you say, "Yo, when I retire, I'm going to go into media. I'm going to be a broadcaster," which may be what one of us, both of us, decide to do. But beyond that, like Dev said, man, can I learn a little bit about private equity? Is there something that, from a business standpoint, hey, affordable housing? Can I get into that, where I can help people still make money, but I'm doing something positive to impact my community? So I think for Dev and myself, it's just about continuing to grow, like he said, as a father, grow as a husband, grow as a community leader. Both of us have been involved with charity work since we've been in the league. Sickle cell disease runs in our family. We've had our Tackle Sickle Cell campaign going for probably about a decade now. So what can we continue to do with that work? Can we continue to grow that? We talked about possibly doing a mission trip involved with other organizations that are doing good work in other countries as well, called Compassion International. So to me, there's so many opportunities. There's so many things. I was talking to a guy at our organization here in Miami, and it's just like, for us, it's about deciding what you want to do next. You'll have options, you'll have things to do. I've thought about going to school to get my MBA at this point. So I think it's about just deciding, hey, what do you think is next, and how do you think it's going to carve out your future? So, like you said, to be determined, but I'm excited about it. And I think that's the most important thing. I think for a lot of us as players, me included, it's scary transitioning away from a sport that you've played for us since you were 10 years old. As my wife said to me the other day, when you think about it, you've been playing football in the National Football League longer than you've been playing football not in it. And it was just like, I started at 10 and I got drafted. I was 21, getting ready to turn 22. And I've been playing football for the past 13 years. So when you've done this for so much of your life, that to transition away from it and know, especially a sport like football, like, basketball, you can retire and still join a league and still play basketball and compete. Football, when you hang the cleats up, it's a wrap. It's done.
Yeah.
Like, you can go ahead and play in that turkey game on Thanksgiving, but you tear an ACL, insurance ain't covering it the way the team is. So I think it's a scary transition to know that, hey, something, so a lot of times sports dictate your life. The only reason you went to class or did certain things. So to know that you're leaving that behind is a scary thought for a lot of us as athletes.
Is that a scary thought for you and your brother?
Yeah, for sure. The transition is something that's always on your mind. You're trying to decide, heck, do I retire? I was talking to a guy now that's joining the Miami staff that retired not even a month ago, and he's jumped right into coaching. And for guys, it's just like, yo, do I retire? I have a wife, I have 3 kids. Do I take time off to spend time with them? Do I jump right into something? What's the best way? And the statistics, 78% of players when they leave the NFL at some point are bankrupt, broke, divorced. And then when you go deeper into that, that number jumps to like 80 something percent or 90 something percent of that are Black players. So it's crazy. So the numbers. So I think you just, maybe scary is not the word, but just aware of how real that transition can be, and not taking it lightly to think like, oh no, I'm good. Like, I've done a podcast, I've done this, I got charity work, I got so many things going off the field. Like, I'm gonna be straight. When realistically, all of those things that you've been building off the field have always been around that one thing in the middle, which has been your sport. So just know that the transition is going to take time to develop, building a new routine and all of that.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Devin?
No, he hit it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
something you got to be aware of, but until you do it, there's still something in the back of your mind wondering, can you do it?
Mm.
So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Why do words matter to Devin and Jason McCourty?
I'll say this. I cannot remember the exact scripture. I want to say, don't quote me, I want to say it's Proverbs 21:18. But words, the tongue can, speak life or death. And I think words matter because that's what you can do. You can give someone, I heard Ben Watson say this when we were helping a young man who was in prison and he got out, and we were giving him some financial stability. And he said, with this check, he said, I want to be a part of not only giving you financial help, but also giving you hope. He said that's the greatest thing that one individual can give someone else is hope. And I think words can do that. Words can give someone hope. Words can help someone believe in their dream a little bit more. Hope. Words can motivate somebody in the middle of a game on a football field. So I just think words matter so much, because when we think about all the positive things words can do, oftentimes in our society, we see how bad words can be, creating trauma, creating negative thoughts for other people. So words matter because it's life. It's something special that you can do with what's going on in your brain and inside your heart, is expressing it in words.
Yeah, I mean, he said that words are an expression, and I think one of the big things he said, when you talk about kids, you can traumatize a kid from the words that you speak into him and pour into him or her. every single day. So I can't really add much to that. I think what he said was spot on. What words can do, life or death.
Man, once again, thank you guys for being a part of this Words Matter pod with Devin and Jason McCourty. Uh, Jason McCourty of Miami Dolphins, and Devin. Also, I would like to give you congratulations for re-signing with the Patriots.
Appreciate it. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, man. Thanks again for being a part of Words Matter. And man, guys from originally from Rockland County, doing big things, and coming back and supporting another guy from Rockland County is definitely is humbling and is major for sure.
Yes, sir. Love, bro. Keep doing your thing.
Exactly, man. Just keep it going. It's an honor to be able to come on and be a part of obviously your growing success, and it'll be dope to look back at this and see the beginning and where you took it, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. All right, words matter.